This should not be whitelisted. Is your, I think you gotta mute the audio on your computer. Oh, my audio's on? How did I do that?
Somebody's audio's on.
Oh,
Hang on.
this is fun.
No, I think they're good.
Is it me?
It's
This, sorry,
there's only 4 of us.
let's see.
I think it's Sector 67 by the left.
Yeah, but that's the podium.
Okay.
Oh, if you look here, here's something really cool. There's this writing in the air, right? See, you have these pens, right? And you can write in 3D space. If you're doing any sort of like 3D geometry or things like that,
He's probably going to speaker on. Isn't there speaker coming through?
oh, that's just my speaker. Yeah. Let's go with that. There's that. There we go. That works. That's good. Okay. So you'll see people draw lots of like characters like in the air, so they can kind of like see things much clearer. I'm crushed. So there we go. Oh, one really important thing you should know is people are really vain and love to look at themselves, even when they're in an avatar. Especially when they're in an avatar. People will literally sit in front of this mirror. I'm some sort of weird Pokemon right now. I don't know why. This is my normal avatar, I promise. But man, Pokemon. People will sit in front of this mirror looking at themselves, sitting with other people, moving their body, and just kind of like, I don't know, jiving the connection or whatever it is. This clock right here, it's a match towards the person's area. So it's like, even if you're in a country, it should match up to that. These pens are really fun to write with. We have like a couple of like, here's like the event flow, like how we want the event to kind of go. I don't know. Working with Japanese people, it's very like rigorous. We're gonna do this at this time, this time. You're gonna introduce yourself, and you're gonna introduce yourself, and we're all gonna say something about the topic. And then everyone else comes in is kind of a mess. So it's really funny watching those two groups interact, and there's always acceptance and difference between the two groups. And then eventually somebody doesn't know like characters and stuff, so we have the whole Japanese alphabet here. I think it's like 56 letters or something, and they've got like 3 of them, and then one of them has 2,000 characters, so that's a whole different bag of worms. People always ask where you're from. If you look really closely at this map, it's a little bit updated. There's some countries that shouldn't exist, or some countries that still do. There's a little Japan map, people always talk about that. We had this topic generator. This was fun. We just kind of had a database of like things you could talk about. Like, cause some days you'd just be really lazy and not decide a topic, and like they would talk about these sorts of things. Right? It goes from easy down to like difficult. And then there's the kanji quiz. Anyone here speak Chinese or like really, really advanced literature, Korean or Japanese? Yeah. Oh yeah. Because I gotta turn off the advanced kanji. This is a little ridiculous. Let's see. Oh yeah, that's a very important one. But people don't sit in front of these and they just kind of laugh at these, or this is actually the most horrifying inside. Some people sit out here. It's noon. Yeah, it's noon. So yeah, that's the world. And really don't have too much to share about it, but I'm gonna hop over to one world. Does anybody have any questions?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Is the world, does it evolve very quickly or is it sort of constant? In other words, does the technology sort of change all the time and so as different people are coming in at the beginning?
Oh, for VR? Oh, like headsets or like
Any of them? I
Maybe a
saw
fireman.
it multiple years ago and no experience with it.
so VR chat has like a class system. There's the PC users and then there's the Android users, the standalone users. So the PC users get access to better worlds, and the Android users kind of get the crowns, they get everything else. So you try to make worlds that are like have access to both, but it's difficult because you know the PC users you get beautiful stuff. You know, a Windows Media Player, like like that generates the lights. Imagine that, but you're standing in the middle of it and it's flying all over you. The Android users don't get that. They don't really get good shaders or light shows like that. So it is always changing, but this world looks like you've just strapped Nintendo 64 to your face, and I kind of like it that way.
Yeah.
But there are much more high on VR chat. There are some really good worlds that look almost real. Yeah. So it is changing.
Yeah.
The I don't know how much that's been a bit since I've worked on this project.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
How do people find out about this?
Reddit. Reddit and Discord. There's a Discord group, and if you're interested, I can give you the link afterwards, and you can go hang out with these wonderful people. They're genuinely nice. Yeah.
Now, what about Apple users?
Apple users. I never really thought about Apple users. Everything is built as a PC. But I know they have their own. And during the summer, I was doing medical simulations with virtual reality, and we were doing stuff with the what's that really big $3,500 one? There's a really nice Apple Vision Pro, I think it's called. That's some really cool stuff. You can scan an object and then you can track it in real space and tag things to it. Really cool. I didn't touch it, but yeah, there's some stuff out there.
All right. So you're one of the like maintainers or admins of this, right?
I'm like I'm like historical refuse. At this point, I haven't touched this in such a long time. But like the stuff I wanted to present is kind of based on this. For my thesis, I talked about, okay, we have this passive world where you can meet and talk to people. What if there's active activities where you can learn language in a communicative social fashion? But that's not gonna work on this computer tonight. So like, yeah. So there's other people who run it now. I believe it's Cinnamon. That guy has his stuff together. There was another guy named Sleeping Now. Really great guy, but the event would start and no one could find him because he had a sleeping disorder and he was probably sleeping. So yeah, there's a couple people who run it now and kind of keep it going. So it's not me, but there's a few things in here that I did help with. So it's about 8 to 9 people. I think there's a question in the back there.
Oh, I was just gonna throw out the mandatory, how about on Linux?
Linux.
Oh, Jesus.
I think you'd have to write a lot of code. I would love to see it. Yeah, I don't know. I think someone's done it. I don't know if this is Linux. Oh, Linux isn't everything, right?
Right.
Just a little bit. Linux is a little bit of everything. All right. Any other questions?
How many people in the room have tried VR, just out of curiosity?
Oh,
Yeah, half the people ish. Yeah. Oh, I was curious.
Be really careful about using social VR. Most of the rules are teenagers just yelling at each other and like being really annoying and like.
It's mostly internet.
Yeah, most of the internet. This is true. This is a lot of the world too. But there are these worlds if you go find the right place and it has a very clear set goal with the regular people. It's like a third place that people regularly go besides work and home. You have a pretty good team.
All right. Thank you for sharing.
Oh, my antivirus just expired.
EJ, ready?
That's what I'm gonna be.
All right.
Right. This.
You can stay on the left though.
Okay.
Actually, on your laptop, can you turn off? Yeah, there you go. I think it is an echo, by the way. I think no, I think it's speakers. I'm gonna put this to the sleep. It's worth too hard.
So like, oh, the sleep.
They can boot you on Zoom too if it's either. I think it's dead. It's dead now.
Yeah, it's over. You lived a good life.
Yeah, I think even with your speakers muted, it was still playing audio out of the speakers. I don't know if the image
What it
caught
was
it or what.
anymore. Just. Oh, now it's off.
All right, EJ, you ready? Round two?
I am.
Ready to go.
All right. So what I'm going to be showing is probably the closest I'll ever get to doing a sales pitch. I've been very careful in the past to just talk about stuff that's interesting. This whole demo is basically going to be on my website. So as framing, this is tech that I've been developing. I've been talking about it in the abstract mostly here. This will just be using it, and it dovetails just absolutely perfectly on top of what Scott was talking about. If he and I had coordinated, I couldn't set it up better. Because what he's describing is exactly what people are using AI for and the kinds of problems that they're facing and how all that stuff works. And what I've been talking about and what our tech is based on, the tech that I've been developing, is not language. And they are large language models. And so what I've been doing has been working since many years before AI was even a thing. And so what AI has mostly brought to the table is helping to explain what I've been doing a little bit less abstractly, and that's what I'm hoping to share to you. As a point of reference, this is all demo code. This is a live demo. We are still in beta, so there are likely to be little glitches. I will warn you in advance. Anytime that happens, I'm just going to say, I'm not going to debug this right now. I'm going to move on because none of the individual things we're going to do are important. And I have 13 minutes and 30 seconds now. So let's get to it. So what I'm ultimately going to be showing is taking an idea and moving it from place to place to place to place. So I'll start by explaining something we would do. I will then tell an AI to do that. It will write a few sentences about it, and then it will write a whole README about it. And then we will continue to interact with it through this website, and then we'll download it to Excel and interact with it there and put it back. And as a point of reference, the way that this will tie to what Scott talked about is that around the 5-minute mark, I will hopefully be able to open up the project I built while you were doing your presentation and show what the spreadsheet of what you talked about would look like. In other words, how would my tech look at everything that project did? And I want to use this to differentiate. When I get there, I'll talk about it. But the problem that Scott presented on and the project he showed is completely different than what we're about to look at. This is more about deciding what that thing that we're going to build is going to do. So they're two very different things. I just want to keep that. This is more like the blueprint or the plan for what Scott actually built with AI. So in this case, I'm going to start with what I had promised, and then I'll flip over to that in a second. I'm going to start by writing a 1-sentence description of what we want. I did a skydiving thing last time. Maybe this time we'll do a like something that would be an Arduino that could keep track of the altitude and auto eject the chute, auto pull the ripcord if they haven't, if somebody hasn't pulled it by some specific altitude. That's an element of the chute, right? But that's a fairly
Definitely not with an Arduino.
Well, is that?
Probably the same microprocessor.
Yes. I'm using that conceptually as a thing we might. So I want to create a ESP32 device to track altitude of a skydiver.
You'd like the definition of a live demo. This is the definition of a live demo.
This is the definition of a live demo. I'll just start there and say create project. And so what it's going to do is take those few words that I wrote, and it's going to start building on it. The first thing it's going to do is describe. It'll turn this into a fuller, better couple of sentences, descriptions of what it wants to do. And I will then tell it to do that. And then we will get a project. And while I'm waiting for this, I'll describe what's going to happen when we get there. When we get to the project, it's going to say README, and it's going to be empty. And the reason that I leave it empty is that when I click create README, it's going to take some time, much like this. So it's going to create. This system uses ESP32 devices to monitor altitude of skydivers in real time, ensuring timely parachute deployment for enhanced safety. By tracking each skydiver's descent, it minimizes risks and improves reliability. I'm going to say next. Create. And
So over here on this README, it's a blank page at the moment because it has an idea of what it's planning to build. But at this point, like all AI, what it is thinking is still very opaque. We don't know what it's thinking. So I can say, please create a README. And as anybody who's talked to AI knows, you ask it a question. This has said effectively, please write a README for this project that you are starting to design. And it's now gonna, it takes a little bit of time. And then once it does do that, so it's now finished, it has written about what I told it. So I've written one sentence and it has turned that into, well, a lot. It's a fairly technical, detailed plan for how it's going to do, in this case, the skydiving project. But that's a lot of words. And as much time as it took a lot less time because I was using AI than if a person had technically written this. Usually a person would have traditionally gone and put this plan together. So AI makes it faster, but it doesn't solve the underlying problem that in like 30 seconds, we're going to change the rules and this document is going to immediately become stale. And any code that we had written based on this, again, whether a person wrote it or we had an AI help write it or whatever that side of it is, that code will also become stale. It will become out of date. It will become something that needs to be updated. Essentially, it's often called tech debt. It's debt that at some point really needs to be addressed. Often it isn't. So this is the first example of that. It's sort of locked in. This is essentially, it's our chatbot. It's just like any of the other chatbots we talk to, except it is specifically about talking about this project. So if I ask, what time is it in Paris? Paris, upstairs. It should tell me that it doesn't know, because that's not what this project is about. This system focuses on skydiver altitude. So it could look up what time it is in Paris, which is what a typical LLM would do, but maybe we're working in a play and there's a scene in it that takes place in Paris at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. In that case, if I say, what time is it in Paris? I want it to talk about that scene in the play that you're talking about. And with a traditional LLM, it'll often, if it doesn't have the context, just tell you what time it is in Paris. So that's the main thing that is different here. So I can now say, tell me about this. And it's going to take that whole README that it wrote, and it's going to describe it in a more sort of conversational way. Here, the system is designed to drive skydivers. There are devices and skydivers and altitude readings. So that's how it has, we're starting to get a little more insight into how it's picturing this whole process. And now this is real time. So if we change the rules and we come back here and we ask it another question, it can answer that question about the current rules. And the conversation we had with it yesterday, which may or may not be right now, or the README that it wrote a week ago, which may or may not be right now, the documentation or code it wrote, this is always current. When we change the rules, whether we tell this to change the rules or whatever we do, this will always answer the current question, but it's still English. I didn't have time to read it. I have 6 minutes and 48 seconds left. None of you presumably have had the time to read everything that's up on the screen, even if you could. So a more, I'll say a more efficient way, in my mind, of looking at the way that ChatGPT understood what I told it we wanted to do is this. There are devices. So there's a tracker alpha and a tracker beta. The alpha is the one we're looking on, so that's the current project. And then there's skydivers and their status, and then it has altitude readings. And the altitude readings are keeping track of whether the chute has been deployed, the altitude and the skydiver ID and the device ID. So this is still pretty technical. This isn't very helpful. But what we can do is I'm going to take this data and I'm going to download it as an Excel spreadsheet. So now, whatever ChatGPT was thinking about, based on the entire conversation that we've had up to this point, is in this spreadsheet. I can save this to my computer, drop it into any AI, any LLM available, ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, and they will know what we have decided up to this. It won't have the transcript of this conversation, but it will have a sense of what we're talking about. And so in here, this is where the helping LLMs not to hallucinate come into it, which is that I can go here and have this skydiver ID. I can insert a column here. we're getting into more live demo stuff. I'm gonna have this be the skydiver name. So this is gonna look up, it's gonna be an index to the skydivers. And I want the skydiver's name, which is this column B. This is just Excel I'm using now. And it's gonna be a match. And it's gonna match this skydiver ID S0001 to, coming back over to the skydivers, this ID S001 and 2. And I want to do an exact match. And with that, I should get the name of skydiver 1, which is John Doe. And skydiver, the second reading is also from John Doe, except this time his shoes. So let's change this. And so at this point, I've just changed the rules and I've added information to this sheet here, to this log, that doesn't just have a reference to the skydiver, but actually looks up that information and puts it right here. So when we ask our guide about this situation, and we ask it about which skydivers have or have not deployed their chute, it doesn't have to understand what a skydiver is or what a chute is or whether it's been deployed. It literally only has to be smart enough to look at this screen and describe what's here. So if we ask, has John Doe deployed his chute yet? It can just look and find John Doe and look over to the right and say, yep, he's deployed his chute. It doesn't have to get trained and hopefully learn the statistical probability of getting the right words. When we ask it a question, it's just going to be answering about this. So if back over here, I come here and I say, has John deployed his chute? Live demo. Hopefully it will say yes and be able to explain why it thinks that he has deployed his chute. John Skydiver S001 has deployed his chute. So I didn't have to train it. I didn't have to give it information about our project and detailed access to logs that it can monitor in real time. As soon as a log comes in that has John's ID and has true for the chute deployed, the AI knows that John has deployed his chute and doesn't have to build a cognitive model of the situation. It's just describing this. This is the cognitive model. I should say this is the cognitive. So I have 2.5 minutes left. I'm going to open up the project that I mentioned that I created while Scott was giving his presentation, which is Interactive Magic 8-Ball Tracker. And so what I did here, I think probably the easiest way to do this is to look here. So just a bit. So what we've got here is, first of all, we have models of the Magic 8-Ball. And I created a couple of different models, like a basic one that would be the traditional Magic 8-Ball. Did you say that they license those words and you're not allowed to create any?
The stock 20 choices are copyright would tell, yeah.
Okay, so stepping outside for a moment. Maybe a corporate one has more corporate answers. An advanced one might have lots of things, or who knows. And then they have a wake word. So I've associated with the different models of 8-Ball the specific words that it should be listening for. This is the first place I want to highlight the distinction between what Scott was doing and what this is doing. I have no idea. This has no idea how to turn on a microphone or how to collect that audio file or what tools to use to turn that into text. This just says that if you're doing a basic 8-Ball, the wake word should be, hey, 8-Ball. And if it hears that, it should wake up. And then it's up to the implementation, the code of Scott, in this case, to do that. And if you say, hey, 8-Ball, and it doesn't wake up, that's a bug. And if it does, that's what it will like. So importantly, the key of this coming down as a spreadsheet is that it doesn't say how to do it. It just says what the basic 8-Ball is and how long to wait after to say, because maybe the advanced one needs more time or needs less time, whatever it is. So we've got the models, and then per model, basic model, corporate model, or advanced model, we have different kinds of answers. These should probably both be from the basic model. So we have yes and no. And then we have users. And so over on users, I've got Allison, and Alice's 8-ball is a basic 8-ball, and Bob's is an advanced, and Charlie's is a basic. And so because it knows that Alice and Charlie both have a basic 8-ball, it knows their wake name. That should be their wake word. It says mom. This should be the wake word. And it knows how long after saying that wake word you have to wait for that particular one. So if you ask the question, how long does Alice have to wait after saying her wake word? It just comes here and it looks and it sees that she would have to wait 500 milliseconds. And then she should be able to continue talking. I am out of time.
Your grace period.
Yep. I'm gonna just go over to here and show the final thing. And so over here, it puts it all together. So we have the user's ID, Alice, Bob, Charlie, what model they have. This is a lookup. So if Alice changes her model, this would then show the new model that she would have. It has her wake word. It has the question that she asks. And then it has the idea of what response was given in response to that request, which is yes or no. And it's of type yes or no. And some of those responses, it's got yes, no, and then one of these is a fortune. It's asked me again later. And some of these are yes, no questions, and others are not yes, no questions. And this spreadsheet is just computing all of that information. It keeps track of when the shape happened. And so if we change this response, instead of being R2, this is also response 3, then this should be asked again later. This should be fortune, and therefore it is not a yes, no question anymore. The spreadsheet is just implementing what we want to do, and all the actual words, this, README, instead of being the source of what needs to happen, it's just a description of that spreadsheet. It's just looking through that spreadsheet and describing it. So if this is out of date, I could just click. I can just refresh README, and it will now take whatever the current rules are and rewrite this according to those rules. So we're just switching what the source is, and what we typically think about as being the source is something that gets created from, well, literally a spreadsheet. Good questions. Questions?
So the broad purpose of this project, as I understand it, is to help with like the development of the software project. Is that right? Okay. So the mock data tab gives us, as I see it, like a schema for maybe like a database that your software would interact with, right?
Exactly.
But the software wouldn't be interacting with this actual data backend, right?
No, so what ArcTech does is you can then write, Sotini, that's the name of the tool. Sotini space ODXML is what this ultimately gets turned into. ODXML to .NET. And you now get .NET classes where you'd have a .NET class called shake. And when you say shake.user equals UO1, and UO1's model is a simple or a basic, and her name is Alice, that will all show up. And what her wake word is will show up in C# in that class. So you'd be able to set that she's user ID, UO01, and it would have her name, what kind of model she has, what her wake word is, how long she needs to wait in C#. Because we've described it here, potentially in English, like we did originally, maybe talking to an AI, but whatever we're doing, these are the right answers. So we can write automated tests. And so if you've written something in, let's say, Python, and you give it a user who has a specific model, and the model is meant to wait a certain amount of time and have a wake word, and you give it that user ID, and you say, what is their wake word? That's the function it's meant to be implementing. And it's not, hey, 8-ball, didn't pass the test. Questions?
A stupid question about stupid questions. When you were first starting out and put in the question that was irrelevant to the whole project, if you leave that question in there, does it go back and does that affect anything that will get past that?
So that's actually a really, really good question, because the main thing that differentiates this from the main problem that traditional LLMs have is that they have a limited context. So if you imagine going in to a big text and they can only look at one page or one paragraph at a time, and you ask them a question, they could be the smartest people on the planet. They could be the smartest agent. And they're not going to be able to answer that question because they don't have the context. And so What they usually need is more context, more training, they need more and more and more GPUs, more electricity, more everything. And in this case, we need exactly the opposite. In this chat window, just as a direct response to this, most chats, you want to maintain as much context as you can. So you talk to them for 20 minutes and you get them to where you are, and then you ask the actual question you're trying and they give you an answer. In this case, we literally don't send anything other than the last response, because they're describing the spreadsheet. When we ask a question, we're not asking it to spin up an answer. They're saying, go to the spreadsheet, look at this tab and answer, tell me what's there. And so sending a previous conversation actually works against it, because it's more likely to have outdated information and see that and be like, well, he just said 2 minutes ago that this is the wake word. The fact that the wake word has changed is just lost because it's in a sea of words. Yeah.
In addition to that, in the context where you're also explicitly telling it, like prompts to not expand beyond that or limit your response to this or.
Yes, and specifically, Scott mentioned RAG, which is the process of looking through big blocks of text and finding the appropriate like sentences or sections of the text that have the answer you're looking for. The equivalent of that here is it's sort of coming up with first a question of how to answer the question, like what tab do I need to look at effectively, and then it looks at the data and answers the question. That's as far as it goes. So it doesn't have to sort of forage through text to find what might or might not be the right answer, and instead it is just zeroing in on that specific piece of the puzzle that also people can. This puts people in all the different LLMs and everybody in the same room, because anybody, you can email somebody in the spreadsheet. And that's the whole project. It's in that one file.
So is revision history accounted for in this at all?
Yeah, the at any point in time, the actual universal like thing that gets shared is this. So this has the model, the wake word, the delay needed, and the mock data. And then I'll just quickly do this in here. If I click edit and I come down here and I change this wake word from being hey 8-ball to hey bally. And then I hit save. At this point, all of the places that had said hey 8-ball are now wrong. And if I look for hey, it's hey bally. And down here, hey bally, hey bally. So everywhere in the text that it had been hey 8-ball has been replaced. And that's going to be true whether it's this JSON or the Excel spreadsheet or the website. If we come back over here, this will also have hey bally.
Yeah, but I'm more concerned about like when someone changes something, now some like is there a stored revision history like there would be for Git?
Yeah, so everything we're doing here is a Git repo. It all gets checked in to Git. So every time anything changes, it generates a new version of this JSON, it generates a new version of the spreadsheet, it generates new versions of all the code, usually in their own branch, so they can do the pull requests, and then all that gets committed, tested and committed. And so it's just the process of making those updates. We decide to change it to hey Molly. There's now all these different places that I'm hey 8-ball. I'm gonna be able to change it in one place, get build, and have all as much as possible of those other things. Just follow, just do whatever this does in C++ or C#, Python, English. Give some questions.
Last question.
Should we buy a lottery ticket next week?
Yeah, that's winning no numbers.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much.
All right, that's all I know about. So we can go around, you can say who you are, what you're interested in, or why you're here. Scott, you want to start?
Yes, I am offering fortune telling